Thanks for Marlene for inviting me. It's just kind of nice to just kind of collect some thoughts yesterday and think about what to do. And I have to just tell you this, just to start. I mean, there are so many people that write a whole lot better than me, and that's really what I want you to know about my thoughts today is that, we'll always find people. My best friends, I think, are the most creative writers I know. But you know what? They just haven't made the next step. And that's what, we can talk ourselves out of writing, or we can just, say, let me just go try and not compare myself to others. Because I look at writing and I think, wow, I have this little writing group that I go to and we write and I read their stuff and I go, how do you do that so quickly? But you know what? None of my friends are published, because they just can't make that next step and step out in faith or even step out in fear, and do it. So that's really what I want to talk to you about today. And I have to tell you that I don't have like a litany of, go to workshops, and I'm just going to tell you my story, okay? And that's really what I can share with you. So I was reading Guidepost magazine. Who's familiar with Guidepost? There's Guidepost magazine, there's Daily Guidepost. I didn't know about that when I first started writing for Guidepost, but that's really this is who I really write for. I was reading Guidepost magazine. I'd been reading it for probably 15 years, and I saw an announcement for a writer's workshop. And I was like, wow, it was a contest, not a workshop. And I was like, you know what? I have this story in my head that I've always wanted to share, and I think I'm going to write it down because, with Guidepost, it's all true. You don't make things up. They really have to happen to you. I call them Guidepost Moments, So I said, to my husband, I've got this idea. I think I might enter this, So I just, not really knowing much of anything. I had never written professionally before, but, probably most of us in here liked to write when we were kids. I didn't mind essay questions, I just could write. I would read Thoreau and Whitman and try to write like that when I was in high school. Still have some of my old essays, so I just kind of naturally liked to write. So I said, well, let me just write this story down. And it was this story, true story, when I was 5 years old at Fontainebleau State Park. This true experience where I saw my dad way out in the lake on some kind of sandbar or something out there. It seemed way out when you're 5, And I was just a little bitty kid, and I decided to just walk on out there and see him. And don't know where my mom was, don't know where my brothers and sisters were. I just decided to walk out to my daddy. And I started walking out there, and I noticed the water was getting up, and then I was like, I don't know how to go back. And I just kind of had this vague memory, of knowing to just keep my eyes on my father, and I kept hearing this, like, just, watch your daddy, keep your eyes on your father. So I was like on my tiptoes and the water was in my ear, and somehow I got to him and he like swooped me up. Melody, how did you get out here? The water's over your head. They went, my daddy picked me up, walked me back and said, there's no way you could have gotten over here. And, I wrapped the story up by saying, I don't know how that happened. All I know is that I was told to keep my eyes on my Father, and I still am keeping my eyes on my Father, my true Father in heaven. And that was my story that I just had in my head because it was true. So I wrote it, and I sent it out, and got that nice letter that says, congratulations, you've been accepted to the Writers' Workshop in Rye, New York. And the letter says that they had 15,000 entries, and they only chose 15 people. And I'm like, wow. Isn't it good that I didn't know that beforehand? Who knows? Would I have just walked away and said, there's no way, I'm going to go ahead and defeat myself right here. I can't do that. I've never written professionally. So that's my first thing I want to tell you is don't talk yourself out of it because there's a lot of competition. I'm one of those little faithful people. I buy a lottery ticket every Saturday because somebody's going to win. It might as well be me. That's really what I say. And I go, well, why not? It hadn't happened yet, but I still, now they're $2 each instead of $1, which really bothers me, But I just think I'm going to do it anyway. So that was my first experience. I go to Rye, New York with these other writers feeling really like, I don't know what I'm doing. They had been writing for all these different little publications, and I just had my story, got published in the magazine, went to the workshop, and part of the workshop was a little spiel about Daily Guidepost. Had never heard of it. Daily Guidepost, are some of you familiar with it? It's a daily devotional. You read one a day. It's true. Starts with a scripture, a story, and a prayer, and you're done. And I realized when I had written my story for the magazine, I don't like writing dialogue. I wish there was a software program. Maybe there is. I don't know. I don't like all that. And he exclaimed as he walked away from the room, I just have just this kind of detail. So I really struggled writing those longer stories. So here was this way to write a story in 300 words with a little bit of dialogue, maybe not, and you're done. So I really kind of resonated with me. And they said, if you have some stories, it's hard to get, send them in. So I got back from the workshop and wrote 5 stories. And they were just true little stories, simple stories, simple stories. And sure enough, I get a big, large envelope in the mail, which I know now means that's a good sign, because my stories were sent back with edits. And I didn't know. I'm just like, oh, look, they wrote some changes for me and told me to send them back in. And I called my friend that I'd met at the workshop. She was like, oh, my gosh, you're kidding me. That's wonderful. We all got the small letter. They just, So that's how I got writing for Daily Guidepost, 1997. And I've been writing for them every year. So every year I get 5 to 8 stories published in there. And I love it. And they're true stories. And so what I look for in the world is Guidepost moments. That are those little Kodak moment kind of things where, for example, if I heard something today, I might go write it down when I get home and go, there's a story there. I was asked to speak at the da-da, and then, somebody said something and boom, So that's how I started writing, and that's all I've done. I don't have a novel in me because I just don't think I do, but maybe I will. I don't know. I haven't been to a lot of conferences, just a few. I'm real happy with what I do. And I feel real comfortable with it. I love writing for them. And maybe there'll be a book later. Maybe I'll want to branch out more, but for now, that's what I wanted to do. So the first thing I want to tell you, I'm going to tell you this. I think I'm just an okay writer. I think I'm a writer that can fit what Guidepost wants, and it works for me. My friends, I think, are awesome writers as well, but they've not made this step. Sometimes we pray, we want to be writers. God, help me become a published writer. Well, if we're going to pray that, then we have to be able to look for those signs that God's sending us. That joke about the guy who's sitting, it's kind of not as funny now after Katrina, but the story was you're on the roof and you're praying for God to send you help, and he sends you the P-row and the boat and all that, and you keep saying, no, I've been praying, God's going to help me, and then you get to heaven and God says, well, I sent you a boat, I sent you everything. So if you want to be a published writer, look for those signs that God's sending you. It might be that you come here and you really learn from other people, and that you've got to go submit in competitions, or you've got to go to the workshops, and you've got to find ways to get out there, because that's really what it is. I remember when I made the decision to work really hard and to enter things like this, when I was at my writing group at Java Grotto on the lakefront pre-Katrina, and that summer I was teaching at the time, and everybody all my friends, one was going to Greece, and one was going to a workshop, and one was presenting and all this, and I thought, what am I doing this summer? So that was really kind of a turning point for me. I said, that's it. I'm getting out there. I'm going to start being really proactive, Then the opportunity came to submit the story for Guidepost, and it just kind of went on from there. And what I tell people is that I've never worked harder. I had a wonderful summer the following summer because I started really trying hard to do things, but I never worked harder. So if you're going to pray, watch out. God's going to answer your prayer, and give you things to do. So one of my things is that, you have to really be proactive with what you want to do. You can't talk yourself out of it. You've got to really work hard and knock on those doors. One of the things that you have to submit, even if you don't have a little editor on your side who's giving you the cover letter, you got to submit anyway. In Guideposts, they call that when you send stories over the transom, as in like the window over the doorway, because most of them come through like my Guidepost editor, Rebecca. I might have a story for the magazine. Well, I've got Rebecca's blessing, and so the editor of Guidepost magazine reads it. But you can also just have a wonderful story and send it to Guidepost, and they read them. They're called, those are over the transom submissions, but they do read them, and you just never know. You just never know. So submit. Guidepost Magazine is a wonderful venue to begin writing because they can be short. They also have Angels on Earth. I've written for that as well. I have just had some wonderful moments where the story fit. Sometimes they're only 500 words. Sometimes they're 2,500. So if you have short little aha moments where you just know God had a hand in it, there's a place for you to write, and they look for those. They look for people across the country to write. And sometimes if they'll ask you to ghostwrite a story. You might have a best friend who doesn't write well but has a wonderful experience. You can write the story. Your name doesn't get on it because you're the ghostwriter. The person's name gets on it, but you get paid for doing it. And Guidepost uses that all the time. Those stories are not written necessarily by those people. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that they don't write well. So you tell their stories told, and you have to have that ego that says, I'm just going to step back and tell this story and let that person, and I'm going to get that check for doing it, you know. But that's still a publication, you know. So that's just another thought too. So I think if you want to be a writer, you have to write all the time. You know, I just finished my PhD in 2011 at USM, 2.5-year program. It was mostly online, about 20% was face-to-face. Wrote a big old fat dissertation on the relationship between Facebook use and high school students' GPA and ACT test scores. So it was really interesting. The result was that with the GPA, there's no difference. But I think that's because teachers have they change grades. You know, they're so like, do some extra credit. But ACT, which is standard, much lower, the more time spent on Facebook, the lower the ACT test scores of high school students. And I surveyed 300 students in our school district and high school juniors.
And where's USM?
Southern Miss, Hattiesburg.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, what I found during those 2.5 years of my dissertation work and my coursework was that I was writing all the time. And I realized how much easier it was to write my Guidepost stories. So the more I wrote, even if it was academic, the easier, and the words just flowed those 2.5 years with Guidepost, because I kept thinking, I don't want to give up Guidepost for a couple of years here. Who knows if you ever get back in, you know? So somehow, in the midst of doing all that intense work, because it should have taken me probably 4 years for a dissertation, I managed to write because writing became so easy during that time because I was doing it every single day. Every single day when you're getting a dissertation, you're writing. And on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, I threw church in the middle there. The rest of it was like maybe from 9 to 11, just writing and doing research and writing, you know, my assignments. So I would say write if you want to write. Keeping that flow going is so important. The other thing is you've got to read the kind of writing that you want to write, that you want to do. So read your books, you know, read all those great books that people are writing that are, you know, going to inspire you, and see how they write. I can't, you know, there's studies show that when children read, their vocabulary is enhanced. So are ours, you know. So the more we read others' good writing, the better writers we can become. The other thing, I've just kind of talked about it, but just submit your writing. Just be proactive with it. Just try it. You know, I don't have a novel in me, I say, but if I did, by today's standards, I'd have a Facebook page about it. I'd be blogging. And if I had to, I'd publish it online. You know, I read a story the other day about a person who just let it become a free download, her book, and it went viral. And then she got a contract for it, publishing contract for it. And now she's writing her second. So we have got to use that media. You know, we were talking earlier about Facebook. I mean, I've even thought, you know, if I had a story, if I had something I wanted to do, I could write like a paragraph a day, post it on my Facebook page, and before you know it, I'd be getting followers who liked it and who could start reading it. And I thought, wouldn't that be a fun, just out of the blue, without an explanation, post one day that says, you know, I was walking down the street and da-da-da-da-da, and there's my first paragraph, and the next day write it, and before you know it, you got all these people generating, you know, support, and you never know where it's going to go. I think that we have to stay up in the media. It's not going away, you know, it's amazing.